Morning. I call this meeting to order. We are meeting in public. Welcome to meeting number 120 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. Today's meeting will be the last meeting of 2024, and I'm sure you will enjoy the Christmas and the New Year with your family, friends, and your constituents. So on behalf of myself and the committee members, first of all, I would like to wish the staff, the sports staff, clerk, of course, analysts and the interpreters, a very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Happy Holidays. And from myself and my family, Merry Christmas to you, honorable members, Happy Holidays and a New Year. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. I would like to remind all participants of the following points. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. All comments should be addressed to the chair. Whether participating in person or via Zoom, please raise your hand if you wish to speak. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee at the meeting convened on October the 21st, 2024, the committee is resuming its study of the recent reforms to International Students Program. Two witnesses that were previously scheduled on November the 28th were not available to appear today. Professor David Green of the UBC and Career Colleges, Ontario. Professor David Green submitted speaking notes before his scheduled appearance of November the 28th. Do members agree to have the speaking notes added to the evidence of today? Okay, all good? No one against? Added. Regarding Career College, Ontario, although the deadline has passed, the clerk will offer them the option to submit a written brief. Is that okay with the honorable members? All good? No objection? Thank you. So, clerk, Mr. Clerk, you will proceed with that. I would now like to welcome our witnesses for today's meeting. On behalf of the committee members, for the first hour, we have from Canadian Alliance of Students Associations, Mr. Nelson Chukuma. Mr. Chukuma, welcome to the meeting. And from the Federation de CIMM, we have Miss Annie Claude Lefam. Welcome, Miss Lefam. And from the International Attraction and Immigration Advisor, we have Miss Vanessa Casanova. Miss Casanova, welcome to the meeting. Up to 5 minutes will be given for the opening remarks, after which we will proceed with the rounds of questions. My request to the witnesses, if you can please manage the time, because I will cut you off at 5 minute period. So with that, I would love to welcome now Mr. Chukuma. You have the floor. You have up to 5 minutes to make the opening statement. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the time, Honorable Chair. Good morning, Honorable Chair, esteemed committee members, and fellow witnesses. I would like to begin my statement by recognizing that we are meeting today on the territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. My name is Nelson Chukuma, and I am the chair of the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations, or CASA. CASA is a nonpartisan, not-for-profit organization that represents students at colleges, polytechnics, and universities from coast to coast. Through a formal partnership with the Union étudiant de Québec, we're a trusted national student voice. Together, we represent 400,000 students across the country. First, I'd like to thank the committee for the invitation for CASA to be a witness today. CASA recognizes that the immigration system has to work for Canada and that the government has committed to reducing total immigration levels. Our remarks today address how reforms to the international student program will impact post-secondary students in Canada and our suggestions as to how the reforms could better promote the nation's innovation and productivity. Let me start by addressing the manner in which these reforms have been communicated. Changes have been announced sporadically, causing significant anxiety among international students who are left uncertain about how to adapt or plan for their futures. Post-secondary institutions, too, are struggling to keep up, finding it difficult to provide students, both current and incoming, with accurate information about the new policies. We therefore urge the government to ensure these reforms are communicated with greater clarity, precision, and with adequate time for students and institutions to react. In addition, we urge the federal government to lift restrictions on spousal work permits for undergraduates and master's students in short programs, and to avoid further restrictions on permits for spouses of PhD and other graduate students. These limitations undermine Canada's commitment to family unification and have economic consequences. Spousal work restrictions risk deterring top talent and imposing unnecessary mental, economic, and logistical challenges on international mature students. We are also concerned about the impacts of these changes on the educational experience of current students, both international and domestic. International tuition has become a vital funding component for Canada's post-secondary institutions. The abrupt reduction in international student enrollments has already resulted in job losses and program closures, particularly at colleges and polytechnics. We worry these effects could escalate, potentially jeopardizing essential yet costly programs for domestic students, such as those in health and trades, and those serving rural and remote populations. Now, while the government continues to consider reforms to the international student program, we would also like to bring recommendations to the committee that could improve the program's economic impact and competitiveness. First, recent changes are creating red tape around hands-on learning. International students should be able to participate in co-op terms and internships that are integrated into the curriculum of their program of study without the need to obtain a separate work permit. Work-integrated learning is a cornerstone of post-secondary education, equipping students with practical skills and real-world experience. By removing unnecessary barriers for international students to participate, we can not only enable them to succeed in their programs, but also allow them to contribute specialized knowledge to Canadian employers as part of their studies. Second, international PhD students are exceptional contributors to Canada's academic and research landscape, often engaging in skilled employment such as teaching and research assistantships alongside their studies. However, under current policies, these employment hours do not count towards the Canadian Experience class stream for permanent residency, creating unnecessary delays for international PhD graduates seeking to settle in Canada. Now, recognizing the unique role of PhD students as scholars and skilled workers, we recommend that formal employment hours worked during their studies be eligible for Canadian Experience class requirements. This change would help retain top-tier talent, ensuring these individuals contribute to Canada's innovation and economy in the long term. Finally, given the fixed level for permanent immigration and the proven tendency of Canadian-trained foreign students to have long-term economic success in Canada, we recommend doubling the comprehensive ranking system points for Canadian post-secondary credentials to ensure we retain top talents who are already in the country. Now, we hope that our written submission is also insightful to the committee as you study the significant implications the recent reforms to the international student program have on students and post-secondary sector. International students contribute substantially to Canada's innovation, productivity, and cultural fabric. The government must therefore adapt measures to ensure they continue to attract, support, and retain world-class international students. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Chikuma. And now we will go to either Madam Lapam or Madam Casanova, 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, au nom de la Fédération,
Thank you very much. On behalf of the Fédération de Cégep and its 48 members, I'd like to thank the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration for this opportunity. I'm Annie-Claude Laflamme, Assistant Director of Studies and Student Life at Cégep de Jonquière. I'm also co-chair of the International Affairs Committee of the Fédération de Cégep, which is the voluntary association of Quebec's 48 public colleges. The Federation promotes their activities, defends their interests, supports their development, and provides them with services. And it is also the official spokesperson and forum for CEGEPS, which is the first level of higher education in Quebec, hence our presence here today. Since the announcement of the reform of IRCC's International Student Program, the consequences, both immediate and anticipated, have been a source of great concern. In a year, no fewer than 5 major announcements have been made without detail or consultation, which created a series of shockwaves among institutions and the international student population. Among the measures announced are, for instance, the creation of a national cap on new study permit applications, changes to the eligibility criteria for the post-graduation work permit program, and the introduction of the closed study permit. That is why the Federation wants to make the committee members aware of the real risks of this reform and qualify data that could have been generalized. The CEGEP network has experienced reasonable, controlled, and ethical growth in its international student population over the years and does not represent a risk or a threat to the integrity of immigration programs. In 2023, this student population represented less than 5% of our total network enrollment, which is around 9,000 students, which is about 1.3% of Canada's student permit holders, which is a marginal number. This restrained growth has been achieved while respecting regional intake capacities and Quebec's workforce needs, and it's in line with the demands of the federal government and Quebec communities. In this sense, CEGEPs are responsible players and allies, and not the cause of the challenges identified by the IRCC. I think it's essential to add that CEGEPs welcome the student population from a perspective of collective interest and not financial gain. Our network contributes to resolving workforce issues. This commitment is expressed in sectors such as forestry, childhood education, but also in healthcare, where since 2022, 467 international students have been able to join and strengthen the healthcare network. Here, it's not the growth in the number of international students that is striking, but rather the growth in the CEGEP's contribution to public services. Minister Miller has also repeatedly stated his goal of encouraging Francophone immigration to Canada. I'd like to point out that the vast majority of our student population is French-speaking, and they attend French-language CEGEPs.
Could you please slow down a bit? I will give you extra time because it's hard on the interpreters. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. You can start where you left your sentence. Thank you. Go ahead.
avec plaisir, je vais ralentir.
With pleasure, I will try to slow down. So, despite the positive spin-offs from the presence of international students, the accumulation of IRCC measures is becoming incoherent, and it risks weakening Canada's reputation as a study destination and consequently the attractiveness of our programs and institutions. The federal government's announcements increase the vulnerability of international students, generate uncertainty, and negatively affect their success as well as their mental health. Our mission at the Federation is to guarantee access to higher education in every region of Quebec. International students allow us to maintain access to essential programs in fields and areas where the need for labor force is crucial. Without their presence, some programs would fall by the wayside. CEGEPs play a uniquely strategic role in contributing to regional vitality and to Canada's economic and workforce objectives. They are a responsible model for attracting international talent and must be encouraged in their actions and not penalized by restrictive immigration measures. That is why we have some recommendations. First of all, the autonomy and specific characteristics of CEGEPs need to be recognized as strategic players, which are distinguished by their ethical approach and their contribution to regional development and promoting the French language. Second, the DCS and ACS, so Diploma of College Studies and Attestation of College Studies programs of Quebec's 48 CEGEPs continue to be eligible for the PGWP programs under the conditions existing prior to November 1st, 2024. Also, access to work permits for student spouses should be preserved for all CEGEP programs. Another recommendation is that people who have applied for a study permit to continue their studies at another educational institution should be allowed to do so while their application is being processed if it was submitted before their previous status expired. And finally, stakeholders should be consulted, and there should be formal and structured discussions before any major changes are made in order to reduce uncertainty and negative impact on the ground. And I would wrap up by saying that Quebec's CEGEPs actively contribute to the training of a skilled workforce and the development of local communities. International students who choose to play their trust in us, they play a key role in our society and its future. So we call on the federal government to review these measures in partnership with our network to ensure a balance between immigration imperatives and the real needs of Quebec and Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Laflamme. Now we will go to the honorable members, and we will be starting with Mr. Kmich. Mr. Kmich, please go ahead for 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Let's start with the Student Association first, since you're here, Mr. Chakuma. Was your organization consulted before these changes were announced and made?
Thank you for the question. I believe we have conversations with IRCC, but a lot of the announcements that were made, we weren't fully consulted on them.
You said not fully consulted. So
Yes.
were you partially consulted?
There were discussions had with members of our team and the Home Office staff, yes.
Before they were made public?
Before they were made public.
Really? You are the first person to tell me that at this committee, that an actual organization was consulted before the government announced these changes.
It's not full. Discussions are had because they impact the way our priorities are brought forward by students. So it's important to bring those conversations up in the way we do our government relations with the IRCC. But the announcements that are made, we weren't fully consulted on those.
Does your organization support the temporary cap on international students? The pause is an answer. Thank you.
I think that to be honest, sir, that isn't a question that is for us to answer because we believe that you are in government are the experts. You know what's best for the economic and social fabric of Canada.
The government doesn't know what it's doing. I'm sorry. That's why you're here. That's why we're doing this study now. Does your organization have a position then on making the cap permanent?
Our position is always to protect students already in the system and to make sure that Canada has a high-value educational system. And so in that regard, you see that a lot of our recommendations are focused on those two values.
Does your organization support the cap adding in master's students and PhD students?
We have some recommendations on master's and PhD students, specifically around making sure that we're retaining top-tier talent with the caps that we're putting in place. And so, for example, for our recommendation on PhD students, doctoral students in particular, one of the things that we're asking for a reversal on is the spousal work permits, because we don't believe that students should have to choose between pursuing an education and keeping their families together.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. So could I define your answer as a conditional yes? Yes, but with conditions?
Yes, but sure, with conditions, as long as it continues to promote how high quality the Canadian education system is and how we are willing to retain talent in Canada.
Thank you for those answers. Je vais me tourner maintenant vers
I will now turn towards the Fédération de Cégep. Were you consulted before the changes were announced? Hello. No, we were not consulted before the changes. Do you agree with the cap on international foreign students? We cannot be against immigration that is handled in an ethical and healthy manner. As my colleague was saying, we don't really have the competences, if you will, to give you a general guidance on that recommendation. So you don't have a position on that. So if the cap were to become permanent for international students, would you be in agreement, against, or neutral? In fact, what we want is that the system shouldn't be causing problems in the immigration system. So students coming into the system should make a positive contribution in the CIGEP system in the Francophone setting. In his speeches, the minister refers to ill-intentioned players. Minister Miller seems to say that you are the problem. We can confirm that we're not an ill-intentioned player, and to the contrary, we are contributing to the vitality of study programs, the development of post-secondary education, and the development of qualified labor force. I have a bit more specific questions with regard to how CIGEPs are managing files and applications they receive from international students. I'd like to know whether the IRCC is consulting with CIGEPs or asking confirmation from CIGEPs that the study fees are paid before the issuance of international student study permits to come to Canada. No, there is no confirmation. IRCC will ask for us to check financial capacity, but they do not ask for evidence that the fees are paid. And I can pass it to my colleague Vanessa if she wants to add something. If you'll allow me. Good morning, Chair and members. I'll be happy to provide some more technical details. So as you know, and as my colleague underlined, the Department of Immigration of Quebec establishes the minimum living expenses and the financial requirements. So they need to present proof of these two elements in their application. So at the end of the day, it's the Department of Quebec that verifies this information. But when it comes to your question, I'm just going to interrupt because I have one final question I'd like to ask you. So for international students who attend one of your CIGEPs, does the department ask you for any information to know whether the fact that the student in question is in the country, does the CIGEP know when the student arrives in the country? No, we don't have a way of verifying that. We issue an admission letter, but then whether the student has arrived in the country or not, we don't have a way of knowing or confirming that.
Now we will go to Mr. Al-Khoury. Mr. Al-Khoury, you have 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I would like to welcome our witnesses. And before I start, I would like to pass 1 minute of my time to Madam Salma Zahid and take it after.
Jahid, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, MP Al-Khoury. I would like to give oral notice of a motion that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee undertake a study of no more than 2 meetings to examine the temporary public policy to facilitate temporary resident visas for certain extended family affected by the crisis in Gaza, including the challenges that the Government of Canada faces in facilitating the exit of Gazans, the challenges faced by families leaving Gaza and once out of Gaza before reaching Canada, that the committee invite the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship to appear for 1 hour with departmental officials, and that department officials appear for an additional hour, that the committee invite affected families as well as Canadian civil society, that the committee report its finding to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the government table a comprehensive response to the report. So I'm just giving an oral notice, and I will pass my time back to Ms. MP Al-Khoury.
Thank you very much. The motion on notice orally, no debate, and we will move to Mr. Al-Khoury. Mr. Al-Khoury, please continue.
Thank
you have
you,
about
Mr.
4
Chair.
minutes.
Thank you. Ma première question, j'adresse
My first question will be for Ms. Laflamme. The new requirements in terms of language competency for eligibility for the post-graduation work permit program are meant to improve the outcomes in the workforce for international students. How do you see the potential advantages of these criteria for international students in terms of its potential contribution to the Canadian economy and promotion of French in the country? Thank you for the question. I will let my colleague Vanessa answer. Thank you for the question. We are in favor, of course, of the recognition of the French language, and we have that requirement at the admission stage for CEGEPs. So students applying need to have knowledge of the French language. And then there's also the Charter of the French Language, which applies at CEGEPs in the 48 CEGEPs of Quebec. So there are compulsory courses as well as an exam that is administered by the department. So we have to underline that all of these measures are already in place for the recognition of French for international students, which is most often the case. So we cannot be against this idea. We, of course, would love our students to have full mastery of the French language, and this is essentially a requirement. But unfortunately, or rather fortunately, we actually already verify all of these elements at the point of application. Ms. Casanova, do you think that prioritizing international students in high-demand areas such as STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and healthcare services, as outlined by the post-graduation work permit program conditions, do these measures support the long-term economic goals and objectives of Canada? Thank you for the question. I will let my colleague chime in. So the recommendation of the Federation of CEGEPs is that all of the programs that are offered in the CEGEPs, which of course are in compliance with the applicable criteria, should remain eligible, because the CEGEP model is based on a particular system. So our programs are geared towards certain sectors, so they actually cater to specific fields that are communicated to us by the department in line with the requirements in the workforce. And I'll pass it on to my colleague. I will also add that there is a regionalization aspect to this issue of labor force. So if you have something that's too restrictive, some regions will lag behind if they have more specific economic activities.
Mr.
Chukwuma, many students are working with their student communities to align themselves with the requirements of the workforce. So with these measures in place, what opportunities do you think there are to recalibrate the international student program in Canada to better respond to the needs and requirements of students and different Canadian communities?
Thank you for the question, MP Al-Khoury. For us, meeting labor shortage needs is something that's important. A lot of the issues that we've been seeing with our students regarding to having access to jobs are mostly through work-integrated learning and being able to get Canadian experiences while you're studying. And so one of our recommendations is really to through consultations with provinces, institutions, businesses, and chambers of commerce for the government to identify province-specific labor market needs and to adjust the field of study requirements province by province accordingly. So that way institutions in different provinces are meeting those needs with the kind of students that they're accepting and attracting, and we're also able to continue to promote innovation and productivity in Canada with the current international student program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Al-Khoury. And sorry, I have to move to the next honorable member. And Mr. Brunel de Sepp, please go ahead, 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank all of our witnesses for being with us today. I'm going to ask my questions to the Fédération de Cégep. So, at this committee in a previous meeting, I asked a question to the department if they knew how many international students attended the Cégep network. And they were able to provide an answer. But at the same time, the same department justifies removing the possibility of post-graduation work permit to students of CEGEPs because there is unbelievable and unsustainable growth in the international student population at these institutions. So what's your response to the department when they make such statements, Ms. Laflamme? I'll pass it to my colleague, Vanessa. Well, we are sad to hear that IRCC cannot answer the question as to how many students are in the system, but we provided them with information, with an annex, with some data, a brief rather, is provided to the committee, but there is no unsustainable student population growth in the CEGEPs in Quebec. Thank you for the answer. Ms. Laflamme, you referred to specific programs or the situation of CEGEPs in the different regions. So they follow the economic realities of the regions where they are located. So if they lose international students, you told us that some programs would be in danger. So can you please expand on that a little bit? Well, in the different regions of Quebec, some programs are losing students, and these are very specific in forestry, industrial engineering. These are programs that are having a hard time attracting students from Quebec. And when you have an international student population, they're providing a qualified labor force, and it's also enabling our companies to hire workers, so it has added value for our different regions. For instance, at the Cégep de Jonquière, there are some very specific programs in chemical engineering, for instance, where you have 75% of the international population who are international students. Without these students, our program would be in a very tough situation, and our companies in chemical engineering wouldn't have qualified workforce to hire. Thank you for the answer. You also said that international students, well, at least for you, it's not necessarily a way of filling in the coffers of your institutions. So that's not clear to everyone in the rest of Canada because there are different practices. So can you please explain to us the unique situation of CEGEPs when it comes to money going into the coffers of CEGEPs from international students? Vanessa, I'll let you start and then I'll finish the answer. Thank you for the question. I'll give you a very short answer because it's very complex. So we are public institutions are regulated by the Higher Education Department. They set the study fees that are to be paid by international students. So the vast majority of this money, if you will, goes through CEGEPs, but go into the coffers of the department. So the money doesn't stay with the CEGEPs. So these are not deregulated fees. So it's a bit more complex than that because we're talking about the financing of the system, but these are the main points. I will add that there is no financial advantage because we do not receive additional funds. We are financed at the level of a regular student when we have an international student, but it's about the vitality and survival of our programs. And I would imagine that there need to be resources that are made available to welcome these students who sometimes maybe need a bit of adjusting because they are arriving or coming into a new way of studying compared to what they have known before. So there need to be some additional resources, I'm imagining, and this will probably cost money to the CEGEPs, just in addition. What's important for me, and I absolutely wanted you to attend a meeting of this committee, is the lack of knowledge when it comes to the network of CEGEPs and how that compares with the department in Ottawa. So Quebec has a different education system compared to the rest of Canada, but unfortunately, they issue pan-Canadian measures or maybe target some issues in Ontario. So I'd like to hear your opinions on this. It seems that we need more targeted, more regionalized adjustments to the decisions that are issued by Ottawa. Vanessa, do you want to go ahead? Well, Mr. Brunel-Duceppe, we do understand that measures at the federal level are at that level. But the circumstances of CEGEPs are extremely different, and our education system is different when it comes to higher education. So we need more adapted measures, ideally. And we, of course, remain at the department's disposal to have discussions on that. So we will always be at that table. Ms. Laflamme, would you like to add something? When it comes to regional adaptations, well, that's something that's very dear to my heart. The CEGEP network is really unique because it's not only in the major cities or centers, but they are across all of the regions of Quebec. So these are not mega schools or mega colleges. We have between 500 to 5,000 students in our institutions. So the growth really is not enormous. We especially want to provide an opportunity to our people so that they can do their higher education studies across the province in Quebec. So this network allows us to do that. We are able to offer a diversified group of programs, a high-quality education that is spread across the entire province of Quebec. So the decisions for this reason also need to be adapted to the regions because there are specific needs and requirements of the companies. So measures at the Canadian level or the federal level will not speak to all of the regions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we will go to MP Kwan for 6 minutes. MP Kwan, please go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for their presentations and for appearing before the committee today. My question to the witness, first I'd like to direct my question to the representation of international students. It has been cited repeatedly that international students contribute some $30 billion to Canada's economy. With the abrupt changes that the government brought about and the targeting of international students and blaming them for the housing crisis that successive Canadian governments, Liberals and Conservatives, has created, I wonder, with this kind of change, what do you think would the impact be for Canada's economy? And in your discussion with IRCC officials, did you ask them whether or not they have taken that into consideration?
Thank you for the question, Member Kwan. I think for us, it comes to a number of things, but first of all, in terms of the economic contribution of international students, that comes from a lack of funding for institutions across the provinces. There's been over a decade of underfunding for public institutions, whether it's from Ontario to Alberta to Nova Scotia as well. And so international student tuition dollars have become an important component for a lot of the public institutions to keep their operations going. The kind of impact that we're seeing right now is because they've become so over-dependent on international student tuition dollars due to the lack of funding, is that we're seeing programs being cut already at a lot of colleges, polytechnics, and even some universities. Administrative staff are being let go as well. And so all of this is happening, especially just before the holiday season. Imagine finding out you might not have a job come the new year because of situations like this. I think the impact for us is definitely making sure that we're continuing to provide a high-quality education system, but recognizing that funding is an important component that needs to come from our government to keep the public institutions afloat.
Question. I think post-secondary institutions, provinces, have come to rely on international students. Frankly, in many ways, they're being used as a cash cow. And some people say that they're being used as ATMs because international students' tuition fee, at minimum, they're paying 6 times more than that of the domestic students. Now, of course, the implications with these changes are not just for international students, but domestic students as well. Mm-hmm. As you've indicated, course selection and opportunities are being reduced because post-secondary institutions no longer have access to the funding, and they have to cut programs in a variety of different ways. So that impact would be significant. Now, in terms of housing, because the government is blaming international students for the creation of the housing crisis, yet part of the problem, as far as I could see, in fact, is the fact that the federal government walked away from building social housing back in 1993 by the Liberals, and in 1992, the Conservatives canceled the co-op housing program and simply just rely on the private sector to deliver housing. That clearly, for over 3 decades, has not addressed the housing crisis that we now face. Now, institutions had historically, there's been times where they partnered with different levels of government to provide and build student housing. Do you think there should be a program like that in place where all the partners are required to make contributions in building student housing?
I think that's something that we've advocated for, and we thank the current government for sort of giving us some of that through the Canada Housing Strategy last year. You mentioned the lack of partnership with co-op housing in 1992. That is actually one of the things that we advocated for with Minister Fraser in the past, to include co-op and institutions to be able to access funding from the Canada Housing Strategy. To your question, I think it is something that all stakeholders should partner with to solve the affordability crisis. I think the allocation of international students as the cause of the housing crisis is an unfair one. I've been in Canada since 2012, and even before the increase in international students, housing has always been an issue. Affordability is more the issue that we're facing now as a country, and I think it's important to recognize that, like, international students are also victims in this situation, but they could be part of the solution, because if we encourage them to go into trades programs where they can help contribute to the construction of this housing, that could help reduce the affordability of the housing, that could help decrease, help with the affordability crisis that we're facing in housing in general as well.
Yeah, Canada used to go about to the international community saying and trying to actually attract international students. This about face is stark in terms of that message. How do you think the international community is receiving that, and what damage does that do to Canada's reputation?
If I go back to some of the things I've heard in my community, I think it's very concerning to international students, because the message that we put forth as Canada is one of welcoming, loving, and very kind people. A lot of the rhetoric being put out there is not one that represents those values, in my opinion. A lot of the anti-immigration rhetoric that we're seeing is mostly affecting South Asian and predominantly Black students, and those are students that we have invited to come to this country to access, like, our education system. I think we have to think about that when we're putting out such rhetoric, because Canada is a country that I believe, as well as our organization believes, to be welcoming and diverse, and these students are important for the diversity and cultural fabric of Canada.
Thank you very much. Now we will go to the second round, and we will again go to Mr. Kimmich for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope we can do this part quickly. I'm moving my motion from December 5th, and I'm hoping to do this all within 5 minutes. We can get agreement at committee. This is the motion to produce the documents that I had requested and this committee had agreed to on October 31st. And the reason I'm doing so is because the department did not follow the directions of the committee, where we specifically asked not for some, we asked for all the redactions that were under Section 14 and Section 21, Operations of Government and Federal Provincial Affairs, that they be provided to the committee. In the briefing note provided to the committee, there were 4 redactions for government operations that are still there. So the department did not comply with the committee's request, and therefore now I'm making an order to produce the document and produce Annex A and produce Annex B and produce Annex C, everything, the whole document, and for the redactions to be applied exactly in the way we have asked for them. I tried to do this the nice way. I note that Associate Deputy Minister said that they tried to do it in a manner that was respectful of privacy, accuracy, scope, and language. I submit to you that was disrespectful of the committee's motion, that he be made to produce the document exactly in the way we had discussed. The email that was sent by the clerk also asked that these matters be kept confidential. I note that we have kept it confidential. I have kept it confidential. But if we don't pass this motion, I'm more than happy to read the entire briefing note into the public record. I want these documents, and every single member of this committee, especially on the opposition side, deserves to know exactly what went into the changes made to the international student program. There's a lot of relevant information in the briefing notes we have now. We need all of the information. That is why this motion is necessary. It will order IRCC to produce the international student program briefing notes within 30 days with all of the redactions we've asked for. We've been reasonable. There are 3 types of redactions the government can keep, but they have to stop hiding the information. That is the motion I'm making. It was put on notice December 5th, Chair.
Thank you. Motion is in order and debatable. So we have 2 persons on the list. We have MP Ali and MP Chang. So MP Ali, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank the witnesses for being here today. We are having a very important study today. It was conservative. They were blaming international students and immigrants that they're creating houses crisis. Now, the IRCC, I'm coming back to the point. Now IRCC has taken measures, and we have witnesses on study on the international students, very important study. Witnesses are here. So my friend brought this motion that we stop this study and go into debate and waste witnesses' time. So I would suggest that we should listen to the witnesses, and then we can go into this motion or deal with it. So we will not waste their time. The witnesses are here.
Is there a motion or is it just
I just wanted to share my thoughts.
thoughts, no motion? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since we have the witnesses here, as my colleague has mentioned, I would move to adjourn the debate.
Okay, non-debatable motion to adjourn the debate. All in favor? No. No. Take a vote or? Okay, recorded vote. Please go ahead.
Give me a second, please. So the motion is to adjourn debate on the motion of Mr. Kimmich. Mr. Ali. Yes. Mr. Chang.
Yes.
Monsieur El Khoury. Oui. Madame Kayabaga.
Pour?
Ms. Zaid.
Yes.
Mr. Kimmich.
No.
Mr. McGuire.
No.
Mr. McLean.
No.
Mr. Ridicott.
No.
Monsieur Brunel-Duceppe.
No.
Ms. Kwan. It's on.
Okay, no.
Okay.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeas 5, nays 6.
Defeated, so we'll go back to the, we have Mr. Chang, Mr. Brunel-Duceppe, and MP Kwan on the list to debate. Mr. Chang, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move an amendment to Mr. Kimmich's motion. At the end of the motion, I would like to add the following, and that if the requested document is not provided without redaction, the committee invite the Deputy Minister of IRCC to appear for 1 hour in camera to discuss any redaction that IRC did not remove as per the Access to Information Act.
Okay, there is an amendment on the floor. So I have now the members that are speaking to the amendment. Mr. Kimmich, please go ahead.
Was Ms. Kwan
MP Kwan, because I asked them whether they want to speak to the motion or they also want to speak to the amendment. To the motion. That's why. So MP Kimmich.
To the amendment?
Amendment.
Just on the amendment, you meant the Deputy Minister or the Associate Deputy Minister?
The Deputy Minister.
So the Deputy Minister is Harpreet Kochar, the person who signed off on this is Associate Deputy Minister Scott Harris. If you're going to throw this bureaucrat under the bus by not having him respond, you should have the correct one. Because I've had a good working relationship with the Deputy Minister, but it's the Associate Deputy Minister is taking direction from your side to not disclose it properly and put it in writing that he was not complying with a request from the committee for the production of documents.
Okay, sorry, Mr. McLean, just one person, please. You know that it's very hard for me and interpreters to manage the meeting. So any more discussion on the amendment brought forward by Mr. Chang to Mr. Kimitch's motion? Mr. Kimitch again, please go ahead.
So just to confirm, so if they don't comply on the 31st day, at the next meeting of this committee potentially, we would have someone from the bureaucracy thrown under the bus because you don't want them to disclose the briefing note.
Sure.
And this would be in camera? So like silently get badgered by me? Like the public deserves to know.
Thank you, Mr. Kimitch.
Sorry, just hold on. Let me acknowledge you. Mr. Kimitch, you are done?
No, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Chang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask, clarify with Mr. Kimitch if he's making a sub-amendment to my amendment.
Pick the person you want to sacrifice.
So,
Sorry, one person at a time. I have Mr. Kimitch has the floor, and then I'll come to you, Mr. Chang. Mr. Kimitch, do you want to say something?
No.
Okay, good. Mr. Chang.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Could we suspend for a moment?
Sure. Before I suspend, I would thank the witnesses for being here. Thank you, and I'm suspending this now. floor is with Mr. Chang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would have loved to debate this some more, but why don't we put this to a vote? So we're going to vote on my amendment?
Yes. All in favor of the amendment brought by Mr. Chang? No. No. And I don't see the vote there. I personally see MP Kwan hasn't expressed her. No. So I don't think you have the support, Ms. Chang. You want the recorded vote, or you are okay with it? Let's do a recorded vote. Okay, recorded vote. Please go ahead.
So the vote is on the amendment of Mr. Chang. Mr. Ali.
Yes.
Mr. Chang.
Yes.
Monsieur El Khoury.
Yes.
Pour.
Ms. Zaid.
Yes.
Mr. Kimmich. No. Mr. McGuire.
No.
Mr. McLean.
No.
No. Mr. Riddicup.
No.
Monsieur Brunel-Duceppe.
No.
Ms. Kwan. No. So yeas 5, nays 6.
Defeated. We are back to the original motion, and I have Mr. Bruno Duceppe and MP Kwan on the speaking list. MP Bruno Duceppe, please go ahead.
Ouais, ben, en fait, c'était mon intervention.
Well, I asked for the floor when we were in the previous panel, and I was going to say that we could go ahead and vote because we knew how we all were going to vote so that we would respect the witnesses, but they already left, so that was going to be my point.
MP Kwan, you have to add something?
Just very quickly, I think this is a reasonable request. At the end of the day, what we want to do here at this committee is just get the information so that the public can know, so that we, as parliamentarians, can know, and then be able to assess the delivery of the programs or the policy from that matter. So we're just trying to do our job. And so I think that officials and departments have a responsibility to meet the requests of this committee. Is not unreasonable to ask for this basic information. So let's get on with it.
Thank you. Any more discussion? None. All in favor? Yes. All against? One in favor. You're in favor? So everyone is in favor? Carried. And I'm going to suspend for 5. No? Okay. MP Kwan.
Mr. Chair, before you suspend, I'd like to actually move this motion, which has already been put on the on notice, that in light of the failure of IRCC's special immigration measure to reunite family members of Canadians and permanent residents in the besieged Gaza Strip and Sudan, and pursuant to Standing Order 108-2, the committee undertake a study to examine the development and execution of these special immigration measures, that the committee also consider Canada's use of its diplomatic relations to help facilitate the free movement of persons authorized to travel to Canada, and that this study consists of no less than 6 meetings. The committee considered testimony from affected families as well as Canadian civil society, that the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship appear for 1 hour with departmental officials, along with the officials to appear for 1 additional hour, that the Minister of Foreign Affairs appear for 1 hour with department officials, along with the officials to appear for 1 additional hour. And further that, pursuant to Standing Order 108-1, the committee ordered the production of all documents and records related to the policymaking considerations that led to the specific dimensions of the temporary public policies that opened on January 9th, 2024, and February 27, 2024, including the 1,000-person cap, the gradual issuance of access codes and delays in receiving codes experienced by many applicants, and the information requested from applicants on additional screening forms that, while respecting Section 19 Section 23 and Section 69 of the Access to Information Act. These details be provided within 30 days of the adoption of this motion, and relevant documents are released to the in full to the public, that the committee reports its finding to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the government table a comprehensive response to the report.
The motion is in order. Debate, and I have two speakers on the list, Mr. Chang and then Mr. Radikov. Please go ahead, Mr. Chang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since we have witnesses here, and this international student study is an important study for us to complete before the year ends, I move that we adjourn debate.
Motion to adjourn the debate. All in favor? No. Against? So I don't think against. You want the recorder vote? Yes. Okay, recorder vote, please.
So the motion is to adjourn debate on the motion of Ms. Kwan, Mr. Ali, I'm sorry. In favor? Mr. Chang?
Yes.
Monsieur El-Khoury? Oui. Madame Kayebaga?
Pour.
Ms. Zaid?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmich? No. Mr. McGuire?
No.
Mr. McLean?
No.
Mr. Riddicup?
No.
Monsieur Brunel-Duceppe?
No.
Ms. Kwan?
No.
So yeas 5, nays 6.
Motion brought forward by Mr. Chang is defeated. Mr. Radikov.
Thank you. This motion, I mean, I just want to mention, we have actually talked about this before. I'm not opposed to talking about it again, but I have I have an amendment that I would like to make to it. I think that 6 meetings is too much. And so my thinking is that if we had one meeting for one of the ministers, the second meeting for the second minister, and then maybe a meeting on Sudan and a meeting on Gaza, that might be sufficient for this. So I'm going to propose two changes here. The first is that where it says no less than 6, that become no less than 4. And then also at the end, where we're talking about the production of documents, I want to add in, just to specifically add in some Sudan piece to the production of documents. So after the section that says, in the English, near the bottom of the motion, where it says, and the information requested from applicants on additional screening forms, comma, then I would like to add in the following words, as well, documents related to the development of the Sudan humanitarian program and the family permanent residency pathway, and then continue on with while respecting Section 19, et cetera. So two things, change it from 6 to 4, and secondly, add in a piece of Sudan to the production of documents section. So that's what I would like to that's my amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Radikop, for bringing the amendment forward. I need a...
That's okay.
All good. And so now we are on the amendment brought forward by Mr. Radikop, and I have a speaking list, Mr. Chang and MP Kwan. MP Chang, please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, can we just suspend for a moment, please? Suspend.
Why do we need to suspend?
Just want to clarify something with my team.
They can do it on their own. I'm the next.
Chair, I raised my hand.
Okay.
They can do what they have to do.
Jayed, you are on the list as well. But let me focus here first. I'm not going to suspend this time, Mr. Chang.
Thank you.
You can talk to your team, but in the meantime, I'm going to go to, you can always come back because I'm not closing the debate yet. So MP Kwan and then MP Jahid.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that that decision. If the Liberal members need to talk to their team, they can go ahead and do that, but it should not take committee time. With respect to the amendment from MP Redekop, I take that as a friendly amendment in terms of amending the number of meetings from 6 to 4. With respect to the other piece related to the documentations for Sudan, I'm fine with that added language for clarity, but this motion speaks to 2 dates. And the first date is the January 9th public policy, and that actually relates to the Gaza policy when it became open. And then the February 27th day is actually the Sudan date. And so I thought by incorporating those 2 dates, it made it clear that it was documents related to both Gaza and Sudan, but to add in the language that MP Redekop wanted to add in to further clarify that, I don't have any problem with it whatsoever either. I just want to make that clear because it was already incorporated in this report to, in this motion to ensure that both Gaza and Sudan documentations are being sought after.
MP Jaid.
Thank you, Chair. So right now we are on the amendment which has been moved by MP Redekop. I think it's significant. It's a significant amendment which he has sent. So can we please suspend the meeting so that that amendment can be circulated in both official languages to all the members so that we can have a look?
There's a request for that I have no choice but to suspend and MP, Mr. Clerk, please email the. We turn the cameras on from the honorable members that are online. Good. We are back to order. So now the motion as amended has been distributed. Any discussion, any debate on that one? Mr. Bruno de Sepp.
Juste dire les interprètes.
The interpreters have not received the text. That's what we heard from the interpretation.
And I see the hand raised by MP Yahid. MP Yahid, please go ahead. And then MP Ali.
Thank you, Chair. So now we are debating on the amendment which has been brought by Mr. Reddycop.
Yes, MP Jayed, that is correct.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The war in Gaza has been... Thank you, Chair. It's a very important topic, and the community has been going through a lot in the last 16 months. It is over 400 days that we have seen the sufferings of the people in Gaza. We have seen the international reports on that. I represent a big Muslim community, and especially big Lebanese community also. I've been hearing these stories of the people from Gaza. Like so many of the people here in Canada have lost like 15, 16, 20 on the average, the family members, their loved ones. So it is really very important that we make sure that we have programs under which we can bring the extended family members here, out of Gaza and here in Canada, because many of our constituents are living by the phone just to hear from their loved ones, like their parents, their brothers and sisters. And we have been hearing about the issues which they have been having, that Israel is not letting people leave Gaza even if the Canadian government puts them on a list. I have a family living in my riding where they had the list of the family members on the exit list. They came to Rafah. Their 16-year-old boy was not allowed to leave with his mother and with his sisters. First, initially, the mother was not willing to leave the child and come, but then on insistence by her husband, who is living in my riding, the mother crossed the border with her daughters. And that 16-year-old boy was sent back, although he was on the list which was provided by the Canadian government. And when that child went back to his house with his other older siblings, because they were over the age of 21 and they were not counted as the dependent, that same night, there was a bomb blast in that building. And that constituent of mine lost his 24-year-old daughter, who was a doctor, leaving behind 2 toddlers. In the same bomb blast, my constituent got his 2 sons, which were over the age of 21, seriously injured along with their wives. One of his daughter-in-law was burned. All her legs were burned. This child, who was not allowed to leave, got serious injuries, life-threatening injuries, and lived in the hospital for many, many weeks. There was no care available for him, and he had to be transferred to Cairo to get the treatment. So these are the types of the horror stories which we have been hearing from the constituents. Then my constituent had to get the custody of his 2 grandchildren whose mother died in that bomb blast. These are the horrors our constituents are living every day, and they have been living with that for over 400 days. So, and many of our constituents were not allowed to get their mothers and their siblings even on the exit list because they are not considered as the immediate family. Because based on the Canadian laws, only your spouse and the children under the age of 21 are considered as your immediate family. But these are the parents, these are the siblings of our constituents. And I think we need to make a serious effort to make sure that we can reunite the families. There have been a lot of challenges crossing the Rafah border. And people have been paying money at the border, US dollars.
MP Jahid, I'm sorry to interrupt you, and I have directions from Mr. Clerk that they want to adjust your mic because it's creating some issues. So I'll give the floor to Mr. Clerk.
Zaid, can you also make sure that you are still selected at the bottom in Zoom, that you are using the headset and not your computer microphone, please?
I'm going to suspend for until it's figured out. Up to you, MP Kwan. MP Jahid. Please go ahead. Floor is with you. She should start from
Wherever she was.
wherever you were.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and the first issue is getting out of Gaza. The second issue is even those people who got out of Gaza and are in Egypt have been having a lot of challenges to get all their documentation in order to come to Canada. So as we hear these stories more and more, a few weeks ago, I was at one of the local mosques in my riding, where one of my constituents lost his father in one bomb blast. 1 week after that, he lost his brother, his wife, and 3 children. And a day after, he lost his other youngest brother and his wife. These are the real stories of the people. This is what we have to hear every day. We have seen that this program, which we introduced this January of this year, was not a success as we wanted it to be. So there is a need that we should study why, what challenges there have been happening that we have not been able to get people out of Gaza. It is also very important that we hear from the families who have been trying to get their extended families out. And also, we should hear from some of those families who have been able to make it so that they can tell us what exactly the situation is on the ground. Just on Tuesday, HCI and Islamic Relief organized a roundtable where they brought in some families. It just happened at the Wellington building in one of the committee rooms. And there were 2 families who talked about the challenges they had to face through in order to get out of Gaza. He talked about the challenges which they have to face and the treatment which they are getting versus those who fled the war in Ukraine. Because people feel, and many families have been talking about it, that those who came in from Ukraine had the work permits, had initial money to support them, whereas the people who have come from Gaza or are coming have no support at all. there are differences. We are able to do, like I know because of the war in Ukraine, we were able to do biometrics in Ukraine. We were able to get people out of those countries. They allowed the Ukrainians to transit to a safe third country, that is Canada. But there is a feeling within the community that there is a differential treatment for Palestinians when they compare the treatment they are getting with the people who came from Ukraine. The situation in Gaza is beyond a tragedy. It's a genocide which is happening there. There needs to be a ceasefire. The hostages and the political prisoners must be released back to their loved ones, and there must be badly needed humanitarian aid. People are starving. Millions of people in Gaza have been displaced. Majority of the houses in Gaza are under the rubble. Have a look at the reports like Amnesty International, which just came out last week. They talk about the genocide which is happening in Gaza. One of my colleagues came back from Cairo, and he was telling the stories which he heard from the constituents, from the people of Gaza there. So many kids have lost their legs, arms. The mental state of health which they are going through, we really cannot imagine that. As a mother, it has been very difficult for me watching on the social media the pictures which have been coming. There are no schools. The hospitals in Gaza have been destroyed by the bombings the Israel government is doing. And these are war crimes which are happening. Every war has rules, and under rules of law, civilians are everywhere protected. But this is not the case which we have seen in Gaza in the last many months, last over 400 days. I had the opportunity, along with one of my colleague, MP Ali, also in January, when we visited West Bank and East Jerusalem. It was a 19-member delegation. We heard stories from the Palestinian people in West Bank, and we saw the suffering the Palestinian people are going through in West Bank. We are not able to get to Gaza, but the sufferings of the Palestinian people are beyond anyone's imagination. And
Jahed,
in Gaza also...
Sorry, MP Jahed, sorry to disturb you again. I know it's a very emotional issue for you, but I just, because I know I have a long list of people on the thing, so I would like to thank the witnesses that were here to take the stand, and in fact, I have to let them go. So on behalf of committee members, I want to thank the members, and MP Jahed, you have the floor. Please go ahead.
Order, Mr.
Point of order.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification, for the witnesses that are being released for the second panel, could you clarify whether or not they'll be invited back in another time, please?
So I have to, it's up to the committee members, because committee members make the decision, and we'll figure that out. And now I just don't want to interrupt MP Jahed time and time again, because the way I see, unless you want to do that now, I can take MP Jahed, if you not mind, please, can I take just a moment to
yeah, please.
Okay.
Yeah, that.
So MP Kwan wants the witnesses to come back. Is that the will of the committee to do that? Yeah, it is. Okay, MP Kwan. So we are good with that. Thank you. And now back again to order. And MP Jahed, please go ahead now.
Thank you, Chair. So where I was that the situation in Gaza is beyond tragic. It is a genocide which is happening there. People are dying by the bombing which is being done day and night. People are starving. Schools are being used as shelter. No kids are learning. And as a mother, it hurts me. It breaks my heart. I cannot sleep at night thinking what's happening with the children in Gaza. The number of the children who have been killed in Gaza is beyond and more than any other conflict we have seen in the world in the last many, many decades. Women and children are just trying to survive, to get food, water, basic necessities of life, which every human being deserves to need, and which we take it for granted. Every human right, every life has a right to live, and everyone should be treated equally. Just last month on November 29th, it was a day, International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. This is the second year, last year also on November 29, 2023, and this year, that Palestinian and the people living in Gaza are under war, are under a genocide. Thousands and thousands of people have died. The work which UNRWA is trying to do through the schools, they have not been able to do because no school is in existence. Instead, those schools are being used as a shelter to provide place for a people to lie down. And I think all members on this committee are honorable and would agree with me that how would we feel if the books in those schools are being used to fuel and cook the food. I think no one wants that to happen. Those books are to allow our next generations to learn. But instead, in Gaza, the books and the copies are being used to cook food for the families because they have no other way to do that. These are basic human rights that we in Canada and people around the world take it for granted, and we cherish those. So we have to make sure that Palestinians can also have those rights. They also deserve the same rights. I can't even imagine the life in Gaza, but what I saw in West Bank, what I saw in Jordan when I talked with the family members. I visited one of the schools in Jordan, Amman. And the kids there, a very intellectual group of students who represented it was called as a model parliamentarians. We talked with them, and one of the child questioned us that why do you teach us about human rights when we have no human rights? It was very heartbreaking to hear from a 12, 13-year-old saying that, because they have seen the killing of their family members, because they have seen how their past generations had to leave their homeland and had to come and live in tents and in camps. Generation after generation, people who were displaced starting from 1948, 1967 are living in camps, some in West Bank. I went to Hebron, I went to Bethlehem when I visited, and I saw the miseries and heard the stories, how people sleep at night keep thinking in their minds that you never know what's going to happen at night, how many times their houses, the windows will be bombed. And I saw myself, along with the MP Ali, at Ida refugee camp, the houses where there were gunshots. And as soon as it was started getting dark, the local people were telling us that you should get out of this place because you never know when bombing is going to happen. This is the everyday life of the people.
Past the clock, so suspended. Come next time.